Welcome to the Fermented Homestead. If you're new here, my name is Anna, and on this channel, I'm sharing our journey of learning how to turn our home into a homestead. Today, we're going to be canning apples. I do not have clear gel or anything else that is canning safe to make actual apple pie filling, so we're just going to be canning the apple slices. We're going to be doing this based on a recipe that I found on Reformation Acres, and this recipe is supposed to make it so that you're canning apple slices that end up a little bit crunchier. So all we're going to do is we need to wash them, peel them, core them, and cut them up into pieces that will fit in the pieces that we want when we get out of the canning, basically. So we're just going to cut them up into these slices. These are about, I think, 16th of an apple slices. And then what we're going to do, we're going to get 5 cups of it, and we're going to put it in our crock. The recipe actually calls for a 5-gallon bucket, but I just scored this amazing deal on this fermentation crock on Craigslist, and I got it for 30 bucks. It's a 5-gallon fermentation crock, and so I'm going to use that because why not, but you can just use a 5-gallon bucket. That's what the recipe calls for. And so we're going to layer 5 cups of apples and then sprinkle on top of it. It's just going to be like layer upon layer, and we're going to layer on 3/4 of a cup of sugar. So we're going to get cracking on that because we have a lot of these that we have to actually peel and cut. Well, not a lot, but I got these are Gala apples, and I got them from Costco. They're organic, and so that's just what we have to work with. And we're going to set aside all the peels and the cores of these so that we can use them for another project. I don't know which project yet, but probably something at some point. And some of these apples, I bought these last week, but I think that it's August right now, so I think these are like the end of last year's season, so they're kind of crummy. But they're not terrible. They'll still work. And I think the idea behind this is that we're going to draw out the moisture from the apple itself to make it so that it doesn't become mushy. I don't know how that works, but that seems to be the idea behind this. All we're going to do now that we have our 5 cups, it's a little more than 5 cups, but or maybe, I don't know. We're just going to pour it into our crock. Going to spread it out. It's basically just a single layer. And then we're going to sprinkle 3/4 of a cup all over in here. And I'll bring you in closer for the next one. Now just do it. All right, so we got as much of the apples that we could save from this. We had quite a few that were just not something that I wanted to use, certainly not for preservation. So we're just gonna I'm just gonna show you what I'm gonna do with this real quick. So I have the crock, but I don't have the actual weight yet. So I'm just gonna do what it says in the recipe, and it says to just put it on top of it, put like a dinner plate on top of it, and then we're gonna weigh that down with something. I'm gonna find something that I can set on top of this. Ooh, got an idea. So let me show you what I'm gonna do here. I'm just gonna take another one of the crocks that I got. I got this, it was a screaming deal on Craigslist. I got 4 of these for $100. I got a 5-gallon one, I got 2 3-gallon ones, and 1 2-gallon one with a lid for $100. Like, you can't even beat that. These things are so expensive in the store. Like, you could get maybe you could get 2 of these for $100. I think, but honestly, I think they're like $80 at least at the farm store. But anyway, so I'm just gonna wash this off real quick because I haven't even used these yet, and I don't want to put like an unclean one in here. So, okay, so got the crock all clean, and I'm just gonna put it in here. It'll fit. It fits. So I'm gonna do with this is we're gonna set this aside, and we're gonna revisit this tomorrow. I'm probably gonna check on it this evening to see how it's going. But really, it just says to cover it with the weight and come back 24 hours later, and then we'll go for the next step of processing. We're just trying to get all the water, as much water as possible, out of these apples so that it won't be in the apples to make them soggy. Seems to be my understanding of this recipe. All right, so it is the next day here, and we've let this shoe fly. Okay. It's the next day, and we are ready to take the next step with canning the apples. We've let it set like this, and it had just took a peek at it for the first time, and it has accumulated quite a bit of liquid in here. this off here real quick. It has, let me see if I can bring it in here and show you. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but I tried to show you. Yeah, but there's a lot of liquid in here. It's crazy how much is in here. So now we're just ready to take the next step. So all we're gonna do with this is we're gonna separate the liquid from the fruit, and we're gonna warm the liquid up, and we're gonna put the fruit into our jars here. I don't know how I'm gonna do that, but we're gonna do it. Okay, so first, let's get the plate out. Okay, let's see. Oh, there's a fly in here, it's driving me nuts. Okay. Oh my gosh. This 5-gallon crock's really heavy. Not a lot of apples in here. So we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna warm this liquid up real quick on the burner. While the apple juice liquid, whatever you want to call it, is warming up, we also have our little canning pot that we're going to use. It's not an actual canning pot, it's just a stock pot, but it's a small one and we only need it for a few. This isn't a whole lot of apples. So I just have that one warming up. We're going to do this the very easy way. This is a really small batch, so it doesn't really take a whole lot to do. All we're going to do with this is I'm just going to take a pair of tongs because and we're just gonna put it in a jar. The recipe that I'm following actually calls for quart-sized jars, but I don't have enough to really do this in quart-sized jars. So we're just gonna fill up a couple of pint-sized jars. So we got our jars filled up with the actual apples. And now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna wait for the liquid to come up to kind of like a warm, hot, whatever you wanna call it, and then we'll be ready for the next step. The apple juice sugar mixture is all warmed up, and so now what we're gonna do is just pour it over all of our fruit. And we're looking for a 1/2 inch of headspace. Let that kind of settle in there a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to debubble it. It's not full, it's not to its final amount of liquid that we're going to put in there, but we did put a fair amount in there, and so now we're just going to kind of squeeze it and try and get a bunch of the air pockets out. You can use any kind of a plastic thing, you can use like a chopstick or anything, or you can always just go and get a debubbler tool. But we definitely don't want to use any kind of a metal because you're going to scratch your jar and you can cause like a hairline fracture or a hairline crack in it, and that can cause it to like burst in the canning process or crack, or you just don't want shards of glass in your food. So just play it safe and get one of these or a chopstick. Okay. But the nice thing about this particular kind of a debubbler is that it has a measurement tool on this side, and it has 3/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, and a 1/2 inch, and you just put it on the rim of the jar like that, and you can kind of test your headspace on each of them. So it's pretty nice. Okay, top all these off, and I didn't add any liquid to this whatsoever. This is all just the juice that came out of the apples. I didn't add a single thing, so pretty cool. Similar principle to like when you're making sauerkraut and you put the salt on it to draw out all the moisture. So it looks like a pretty similar thing. Okay, so one way it's pretty neat that you can tell, you have this canning jar here, you have these threads, and if you see where all the threads meet right here, you have to pardon my tomato fingers there, but you can see this line here, this ring, the bottom is the 1 inch mark, and then this one here, the bottom is the 1/2 inch mark, and here the bottom is the 1/4 inch mark. You got to make sure you get it by the bottom though. So that's a pretty neat and easy way that you can tell most of your headspace. The next step that we're gonna do with this is we're gonna wipe the rims off with some vinegar. And we're gonna do that for several reasons. We're gonna get this is really sugary. So it's gonna get any kind of sugar water that might be on top of there that might kind of interfere with the seal. And then also any particles that might be on there that would also interfere with the seal. Just want to make sure it has a nice solid connection to the jar. Nothing in the way. There we go. Those are all wiped down. Okay, so now all we're going to do with this, we have some clean lids, and what we're going to do with these lids, we're just going to put it on top of each of these jars. So now we're just going to put it on there fingertip tight, and that is basically as tight as you can get it reasonably with these 3 fingers. You're just gonna kind of put it on there. You're not gonna crank it or anything, you're just gonna put it on. There you go. And I think with my canning pot over here, I think I let it get just a little bit too warm. It's a little too warm for my comfort level. I don't want to risk temperature shocking the jars. So I'm gonna let it cool off just a little bit, and then I'll bring it right back. I'm sure we can make this work. I'm just gonna spread out the little flour. Nothing's kind of thing. Okay, so we don't have enough jars to actually fill up the pot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab a couple of empty jars just to fill in the space so they don't get too crazy in here. There we go. So now that we have these 2 gaps filled, we're gonna go ahead and close the lid on here. I have the heat cranked up, and we're just going to bring this up to a rolling boil. And once it's at a rolling boil, then we're going to set our timer for 30 minutes. And then once the 30 minutes is up, we'll turn the heat off and take the lid off and let it cool for 5 minutes, and then probably a little bit longer than that. And then we'll start to slowly pull the jars out. So you can see it's still kind of boiling, just a little bit. I just pulled it out of the canner. And so we're just going to let this set without messing with it overnight, and I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like tomorrow. It is tomorrow, and I wanted to bring you guys back and show you. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit tempted just to stop filming this video. I had a canning fail, but I wanted to go ahead and share that with you guys because everything that I did was perfectly fine. It was my fault in the actual canning process as to why this became a canning fail. So I wanted to bring you and but I want to tell you my mistake that I made. And what I did was I cooked in that stock pot that I have, right? And it's not a typical canning stock pot. And I was very busy last night, and I just got distracted and walked away. I made sure that everything was fine. It was boiling. I've never had this issue ever before, but I didn't check on it throughout the canning process. And it lost so much water from the boiling process that the water had gone down to like this level right here. And instead of maintaining the water level above the actual canning jar. So with these particular ones, since it lost that much water, my husband and I are both not comfortable actually putting this on the shelf, and which is great because, well, it's not great, but it's convenient that I ended up doing such a small batch that it is a canning fail technically, but I can just throw these in the fridge and we'll just use them up within the next month or two because it does still have an actual seal on it. It's just not, it hasn't killed off. But just for whatever reason, all the canning rolls and things like that, which I'm not entirely certain of, because I did have the lid on and it was steamed, but we're still just not comfortable with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the fridge. But first, I mean, it did still cook for the entire half an hour and we did still do all the processes within this recipe. It was my fault that we're not gonna put this on the actual shelf, but I still wanted to see how it is. I wanna see if it kind of maintains its texture. It definitely doesn't look very mushy. You can see it maintained its shape, but you can also see, sorry, I have gardening fingers, but let me see if I can find it. You can see like there's liquid here, but then when you get up to right here, that's kind of where the water line is, right there. And so we had a lot of liquid loss as well. And I'm not entirely certain what the cause of that was. It had a lot of seepage. So we are gonna still taste test this. And show you kind of, when you hear that sound, you know you had a pretty good seal. So all we're gonna do with this is we're gonna kind of dig in just a little bit here and floppy. As far as canned apples go, that's a win right there. It's obviously not as crunchy as biting into an apple, but it's not mushy. It still has texture, it still has flavor, and it's really good. This is a total win. This is really, really good. So while I failed in making this recipe and making this shelf stable, it is a perfectly good recipe and one that you should totally use. I honestly think it's better than anything that I bought in the store. Usually when I buy the canned apples, normally they're pretty darn mushy, and these ones actually maintain their shape. I don't know how they're gonna be after cooking them in like an apple crumble or a crisper or anything like that, but we're gonna find out and I'm gonna bring you along and show you, because obviously we need to cook these fairly soon. We can't just throw them in the pantry. So I'm gonna bring you along and show you those. Look forward to those recipes, some really quick, easy, and simple recipes, because that's, if you hadn't noticed, that's kind of what I'm about. Quick, easy, and simple. I hope that you enjoyed this video and I hope that you learned something from it, whether it be what to do, what not to do, or a new idea of something that you can. Apple season is coming up here in the near future, and this is super easy way to preserve some apples. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any tips on what might have happened with this, as far as the liquid loss, I don't know why I lost so much liquid. I have a really big issue with that when I do water bath canning, and I try and avoid water bath canning simply because of that. So if you have any tips or tricks for me that I can pass along to other people, let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to learn from you. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time. Bye.